Do you have a curiosity to know about the British royal family? There are many extraordinary hierarchies in their royal group. Prepare to be amazed as you are going to be aware of this awesome, noble thing that happened in the United Kingdom. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and turn on notifications to join us on the Curiosity Waves. British royal family hierarchy. King Charles III and his immediate relatives are referred to as the British royal family. Who is and is not a member is not clearly defined by law or by any governmental authority. The royal housemakers have, however, published various lists outlining the members of the royal family. They frequently engage in charitable and donation-based work and hobbies, and support the monarch and hierarchy when they participate in public activities. King Charles III is the monarch of the United Kingdom and 14 other Commonwealth nations. The head of the royal family is Charles. Charles, who as of 2022 has 2 children and 5 grandchildren, is the eldest son of Elizabeth II and the firstborn grandson of George VI. There have been 62 kings and queens of England and Britain throughout the course of about 1,200 years. I'll hand you the House of Windsor's throne map in this situation. Number 1. George V, 1910 to 1936. When George's older brother passed away, he suddenly became the heir apparent, which was not what he had anticipated. He liked the water and enlisted in the Navy as a cadet in 1877. He had a quarter-deck demeanor and was a brash, robust man. He wed Princess Mary of Teck, the fiancée of his deceased brother, in 1893. Between 1894 and 1905, King George V and his wife Mary of Teck had 6 children together. They lost one of their children before they reached adulthood. The family's infant, Prince John, suffered from severe epilepsy and a learning handicap. At the age of 13, he passed away in 1919. His reign was challenging due to the First World War, which lasted from 1914 to 1918. And the unrest in Ireland, which resulted in the establishment of the Irish Free State. He started the Christmas Day royal broadcasts in 1932, and in 1935 he celebrated his Silver Jubilee. His worries about the Prince of Wales and his obsession with Mrs. Simpson overshadowed his later years. Number 2. June 1936, abdicated December 1936. Edward VIII. Edward VIII, who reigned as Prince of Wales from January to December of 1936, was successful in carrying out a number of regional excursions to places affected by the economic depression as well as other formal engagements. The King's Flight was founded in 1936 by Edward, the first king or queen to possess a pilot's license to provide air transportation for the royal family's official obligations. The prince met and fell in love with Mrs. Wallis Simpson, a married American woman, in 1930. When Mrs. Simpson secured a divorce in 1936, and it became apparent that Edward was intent on getting married, and concern about his personal life increased in the cabinet, opposition parties, and the Dominions. At some point, Edward realized he had to make a decision between the crown and Mrs. Simpson, a lady who had been through 2 divorces and was therefore unfit to serve as queen. His Majesty's Declaration of Abdication Act, which barred Edward VIII of any children he might have from inheriting the throne, received royal assent from Edward VIII on December 11, 1936, putting his instrument of abdication into force. After being named Duke of Windsor in 1937, Edward wed Wallis Simpson in a ceremony in France. The Duke of Windsor fled to Lisbon in 1940 from Paris, where he was residing at the time of the fall of France during the Second World War. The governor of the Bahamas was subsequently named, and he served in that capacity until 1945. He spent his final years living abroad until passing away in Paris in 1972. He is interred at Windsor's private cemetery next to the Frogmore Mausoleum. Edward had a short 325-day reign. He was never crowned. Albert, who assumed the name George and became king as George VI, was his brother. Number 3. George VI, 1936 to 1952. Although George was the complete antithesis of his brother, the Duke of Windsor, a timid, anxious man with a terrible stutter, he had inherited the steadfast qualities of his father, George V. The British people adored and admired him greatly. After his brother, King Edward VIII, abdicated in December of 1936, George VI unexpectedly became king. He was a diligent and committed man who put in a lot of effort to fit into the role into which he was suddenly thrust. He was naturally reserved and held a strong religious conviction, and his wife assisted him in his efforts. In 1923, he wed Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. His most notable successes were during the Second World War, when he spent most of his time at Buckingham Palace. The palace was bombed 9 times during the war. He garnered a lot of popularity when he and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, visited heavily bombed regions in the East End of London and other parts of the nation. As most of Europe was subjugated by Nazi Germany, the king and his wartime prime minister, Winston Churchill, grew close. The George Cross and George Medal were established by the king in 1940 to recognize acts of courage by citizens and to reflect the comprehensive scope of modern combat. The king traveled extensively throughout South Africa in 1947 with the Queen, their daughters Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, and other royals for the first time ever. George was no longer the Emperor of India after India and Pakistan gained their independence in 1947. Due to Britain's precarious post-war economic condition and the start of the Cold Conflict, the effects of the war persisted well into the post-war era. As a result, the Commonwealth relationship changed, and the post-war Labour administration implemented social reforms. The strain of the Second World War and the tensions of the post-war era had taken their toll on the king's health by 1948, even if it appeared that Britain had overcome the harshest hardships of those years. The king, who was 56 years old, passed away in his sleep at Sandringham on February 6, 1952, after failing to recover from a lung operation. The king's funeral was held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, where he is buried, after lying in state at Westminster Hall. On a note that was attached to the government's wreath at the king's funeral, Churchill had scribbled the words, "For Valor," which are inscribed on the Victoria Cross. Number 4. Elizabeth II, 1952 to 2022. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, also known as Lilibet to close family, was born on April 21, 1926 in London. Elizabeth, like her parents, contributed significantly to the war effort during World War II by joining the British Army's Auxiliary Territorial Service for Women and receiving training as a mechanic and driver. On VE Day, Elizabeth and her sister Margaret joined the throngs of people in London streets to commemorate the end of the war. She had 4 children, Charles, Anne, Andrew, and Edward, with her cousin Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Elizabeth succeeded her father George VI as monarch of 7 Commonwealth nations, including the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka. The first televised coronation was Elizabeth's in 1953, which increased interest in the medium and doubled the number of UK television licenses. The enormous popularity of the 2011 royal wedding between Prince William, a commoner, and Kate Middleton, the future Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, was a reflection of the British monarchy's high visibility both at home and internationally. The Queen's Diamond Jubilee, which marked her 60 years as Queen, was celebrated in 2012, making it a significant year for the royal family as well. Elizabeth overtook her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, who ruled for 63 years and 216 days as the longest reigning monarch in British history on September 9, 2015. Elizabeth was crowned in 1953, and in 1977, 2002, 2012, and 2022 consecutively, she celebrated her silver, golden, diamond, and platinum jubilees. Although she occasionally encountered Republican sentiment and media criticism of her family, particularly following the dissolution of her children's marriages, her annus horribilis in 1992, and the passing of her former daughter-in-law, Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997, support for the monarchy in the United Kingdom remained consistently high throughout her lifetime. Charles III succeeded Elizabeth when she passed away in 2022 at Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire at the age of 96. Since Winston Churchill's funeral in 1965, her state funeral was the first to be held in the UK. Number 5. King Charles III, 2022 until present. That was the new king's first action after taking power. Charles Philip Arthur George was one of the 4 names he had the option to choose from. He is not the only person who will have his title changed. The king has bestowed the titles of Prince and Princess of Wales on Prince William and his wife Catherine, who are now known as the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge. The wife of the monarch is referred to as the consort, and Camilla, Charles's wife, now has the title of Queen Consort. King Charles III assumed the throne at the age of 73 after Queen Elizabeth II passed away, and his wife Camilla assumed the title of Queen Consort. Charles is the heir apparent to the British monarchy, who is the oldest. Charles Philip Arthur George was born in Buckingham Palace on November 14, 1948, and upon his mother's coronation as Queen Elizabeth II in 1952, he was named as the heir presumptive. Give us a thumbs up by clicking the like button and share your thoughts with us in the comments area below. Don't forget to switch on post alerts and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our updates. Finally, view the channel to see more content similar to this. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the future video.